Hey everyone, welcome back to the Irish Breakdown Podcast. A little bit of a Notre Dame recruiting updates, I guess, but we're going to kind of project and give you guys a little bit of insight to what you should expect on Saturday because it is another very busy recruiting weekend this Saturday, April 6th. We have already had a bunch of visitors on campus this weekend, including on Wednesday, Noah McHale, star linebacker out of Bonita High School in the state of California, 2025 safety out of Mount Tabor in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Jadon Blair as well visited. Brady Hart in the 2026 class out of Cocoa in the state of Florida. It's been a busy week. DJ Williams, star athlete in the 2026 class, also visited on Monday, was on campus for a couple of days. Very busy week. So now we go into the weekend where we are expecting several important visitors in the 2025 and 2026 class, and wanted to give you guys a little bit of an early primer and understanding of where things stand with Notre Dame and several of these recruits. And we'll get into a little bit of just kind of the backstory and what's in stake for this visit to the University of Notre Dame. So let's start with the 2025 players that are on campus. One is a very interesting player that we haven't spoke about a ton on this channel, and that is 2025 Houston, Texas, Decaney wide receiver Tanook Hines, who will be making his first visit to Notre Dame, about 6'2", somewhere in that ballpark, 180 pounds, 10,500 meter speed. So big time speed threats, athletes in the 2025 class. Now, Tanook is one of the wide receivers that Notre Dame is still continuing to recruit. Not necessarily as of today at the highest level on the board. As far as the priority recruits and 2025 at wide receiver, I think of Derek Meadows, obviously the Bishop Gorman wide receiver out of the city of Las Vegas, is pretty much the top recruit on the board for Notre Dame in the 2025 class to hopefully finish it up. They're also recruiting IMG Academy wide receiver Raiden Vines Bright, who just visited Notre Dame recently and has an official visit set later this offseason as well to come back to South Bend, Indiana. But Tanook Hines is still a player that Notre Dame wanted to obviously come take a visit, come check out a practice, and kind of see where things go. Because he brings a variable to the table that Notre Dame just kind of needs more and more of moving forward, and that is that long speed. That is the ability to take the top off the defense. Had over 800 yards as a junior in high school. When you look at his offer list as well, I mean, he is being recruited by some big-time players in the class, and that includes obviously some of the Texas area schools, but, kind of looking at his offer list, which, I mean, we're talking about a kid that is rated as a composite 4-star in the 2025 class out of the state of Texas. Right now, he has offers from Notre Dame, Alabama, Arkansas, SMU, Arizona State, South Carolina, Florida, Houston, LSU, Miami, Michigan, Michigan State, Mississippi State, Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Penn State, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, Tennessee, Texas, TCU, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, USC. Very impressive offer list. Wisconsin, Washington State, Baylor. There's a lot of big-time programs that are coming after Tanook Hines in the 2025 class. As of today, there's not a ton of momentum with Notre Dame and Tanook Hines, but things could always change when you get him to campus, right? So will Tanook Hines, after this visit, become a guy that is a somewhat priority for Notre Dame in the class? That remains to be seen. We'll kind of let this process play out a little bit, and we'll have an update for you after Saturday. But obviously, Tanook Hines is one of the only couple 2025 recruits that will be on campus on Saturday to see the University of Notre Dame. So he's a player to obviously keep a close eye on. Another guy is Trey McNutt, who has been seemingly on the board for Notre Dame for a long time. He is out of the state of Ohio. He is a Cleveland Heights guy, if I remember correctly. Pulling it up real quick. Sorry, Shaker Heights in Cleveland, Ohio. So Shaker Heights safety, also rated as a corner by some, rated on 247 composite as the number 27 overall player and number 1 safety in the 2025 recruiting class. I would say for Trey McNutt, who's, I believe this is Trey's 3rd time on campus. So he's been on campus a ton for the University of Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is one of probably the top 4 schools for Trey McNutt. I do think Notre Dame has done a really good job recruiting Trey and continuing to get him back to campus. But ultimately, I've talked about this in the past, he's an Ohio kid that Ohio State is pushing for tremendously. I just think that he ends up probably with the Buckeyes would be my greatest guess there. But I would say, regardless, and there's some recruitments that you're just kind of like, I don't think Notre Dame did X, Y, and Z that could have put them in better position. I think they've done about as well as they can with a guy like a Trey McNutt. It was just always going to be kind of working, you know, you had to kind of really just pull a couple upsets in this one, right? You were going to have to do some things to really push yourself to the forefront. And I just don't think that that was necessarily on the table or sustainable of a model to be able to pull out the upset. But regardless, Notre Dame getting him to campus multiple times, that is a good sign. So maybe they're able to show him something that's even able to create more and more momentum. But I do think Notre Dame's done a good job with Trey McNutt. It's just unfortunate that he is an Ohio-based kid that is very high on the Buckeyes, and I do think that in the end, the home state Buckeyes are going to have a very good chance to close on a Trey McNutt. One of the top wide receivers in the 2026 class, moving to a few of these guys. One, Deon Carter, who is out of Ellenwood, Georgia, Cedar Grove. 2026 wide receiver listed 6 foot, 165 pounds, rated as a 5-star. The number 14 overall player in the 2026 class, and number 2 wide receiver, according to the 247 Sports composite ranking. He's also rated as the number 4 player in the state of Georgia. Obviously, a very talent-rich place, to say the least. So he's going to be checking out campus. He is also the son of former Florida State running back Dexter Carter. So that's kind of obviously worthy of note there. He's being recruited by a long list of very impressive suitors. So Louisville, West Virginia, Alabama, Florida State, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Indiana, Kentucky, LSU, Miami, Michigan, NC State, Nebraska, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Penn State, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Florida State, USC, Virginia Tech. Those are the Power 4 offers right now for Deon Carter, who, I mean, look, you don't have to be a great evaluator to pop on Deon Carter film and be like, that guy's pretty good. The guy's a really, really good football player, right? And Notre Dame getting one of the top and arguably the top wide receiver in the 2026 class early on to campus is noteworthy. Like, that is a big, I mean, that's just a great job by the Notre Dame staff. Like, that is a big occurrence that's about to happen, getting him on campus. Hopefully, we've heard obviously very rave reviews about how the wide receiver position has looked at Notre Dame so far in spring. So hopefully he's able to get on campus and he sees Chris Mitchell and Jaden Greathouse and Jaden Thomas and some of these guys that we keep kind of reading about in our practice reports, that they're able to show out and kind of turn some heads for Deon, because him being a son of a Florida State, and being a legacy for the Seminoles and being recruited by schools like Ohio State and Alabama that have great lineage recently of producing wide receivers. It's going to be a tough one in the end, obviously, but the fact that he is visiting Notre Dame so quick, I think that's pretty telling as far as like general interest and early on. So they need to be able to, I think, show him that this is a place that he can be very successful at. If they do, then I think that you have a chance to, at least be in the conversation until the end. So getting Deon Carter on campus this early after being offered during the pot of gold, I think is a very good job by Notre Dame. And now you have an opportunity to impress one of the top wide receivers, arguably the top wide receiver in the 2026 recruiting class. So very notable, to say the least, getting someone like Deon Carter on campus. We don't talk about an offensive lineman, because if you're talking about offensive linemen in Notre Dame, they both recruit and develop the position about as well as anybody out there. And one of the top offensive linemen so far rated in the 2026 class is Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, Cumberland Valley offensive lineman Tyler Merrill, who is a verified 6'5", 320 pounds. He's a massive kid, plays offensive tackle for Cumberland Valley. I think he probably projects a little bit more favorably into offensive guard, but regardless, he has the size, the physicality, and the demeanor to be a very good offensive lineman on the next level. Rated on the 247 composite as number 48 overall player and number 1 interior offensive lineman in the 2026 class. He has a ton of early offers in the 2026 class as well. Schools like Notre Dame, Alabama, Texas A&M, Virginia Tech, Boston College, Duke, Iowa State, Michigan, Ohio State, Nebraska, Penn State, Pittsburgh, Rutgers, South Carolina, Syracuse, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. And you also hear Notre Dame, Michigan, Wisconsin, those types of schools. Anytime that they offer offensive linemen, obviously that is very noteworthy. So Tyler Merrill is a player that is very well received on the recruiting side of things, generating a lot of interest from some big programs, including Alabama and Notre Dame. And this is your first opportunity to really showcase what you have. And he talked, and I already have a update on him that's going to be at IrishBreakdown.com if it's not already, talking about just him wanting to see Joe Rudolph in person and how he coaches and how he interacts with the room and how he could potentially see himself in the room. Like the teaching aspect of playing offensive line is big for Tyler Merrill. And I think that that is obviously a great opportunity to showcase that Joe Rudolph is that teacher that can best get everything out of Tyler Merrill. So they're going to get him to campus. And I think that Notre Dame, for me personally, they have a great opportunity to set the tone with one of the top offensive linemen in the 2026 class, a position that Notre Dame has never had a problem recruiting and developing. And, Harry Heastan, what he was able to do, I mean, throw shade at Jeff Quinn as a developer, but Jeff Quinn was a very good recruiter, right? He was a very good recruiter, and Joe Rudolph has done obviously some great things taking over for Harry Heastan after his second stint. 2026 Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania Central Catholic linebacker Coulson Gaton is going to be back on campus. This is actually be his third visit to campus. He was here last offseason before he had an offer, obviously. He was here for the Pittsburgh game this past season, and he was just offered during the Pot of Gold day and on St. Patrick's Day. So early offers: Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Syracuse, Duke, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, Nebraska, Penn State, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. So a lot of teams really like the 6'1", 205-pound linebacker who Central Catholic, Notre Dame obviously had some nice impact in Central Catholic at times. You think obviously of the Heinisch brothers. You think about, I know he ended up having to medically retire, but David Adams was a big time linebacker out of Central Catholic a couple years ago. So do they continue that impact and that momentum with Coulson Gaton? I mean, it's possible. It's a deep linebacker board. We're still trying to figure out, obviously, what the pecking order is in the 2026 class, but Coulson Gaton is obviously one of the linebackers that has had a lot of traction on the recruiting side of things early on. So Coulson Gaton is certainly worth keeping a close eye on and how he enjoys his visits on campus, because this will be his first time. Again, third time on campus, but this will be his first time checking everything out as a player that has an offer from the University of Notre Dame, which that kind of changes changes the equation a little bit for a player like Coulson Gaton. We had a linebacker, another one that's going to be on campus, a big time player, Las Vegas, Nevada, 2026 Desert Pine linebacker, Kenneth Goodwin, who has offers already. He's actually on a little bit of a Midwest swing right now. So he's been at Ohio State already. He has offers from Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, Arkansas, Boston College, Ole Miss, SMU, Texas A&M, Washington, among others. 6'1", 205 pounds, extremely versatile player. I mean, you'll see him playing overhang at times. You'll see him playing inside linebacker. You'll see him rushing off the edge. Desert Pines uses Kenneth Goodwin all over the place, which if you watch Al Golden's defense first 2 years, you know that they like to do a lot of that stuff as well. I mean, think about how they use Maris Loifau as a will linebacker who could also come up on the edge as a little bit of a sub-package rusher. Kenneth Goodwin, although a different body type and a different player than Maris Loifau, like he can do some of those same things with his ability as a blitzer and his ability to get it home against quarterbacks. Kenneth Goodwin, very talented football player. And this will be his first trip to campus. Notre Dame is looking to make an impact in Las Vegas, right, in 2025 with Derek Meadows out of Bishop Gorman. Can that continue into 2026 with Desert Pines linebacker Kenneth Goodwin? I think that we'll know a lot more after this weekend, because this is kind of your first introduction to Notre Dame. And this is where you are going to see if it is a potential good fit for you or if it's not a place that is overall going to be in your best interest long-term. And I think that Notre Dame has the opportunity to show that they are a place that a person like Kenneth Goodwin could thrive potentially on the next level. Now, two players that do not currently hold offers from Notre Dame, but I'm interested to see if that changes on Saturday when they visit for the first time. The first player, a young man out of the state of Alabama, actually, Garrett Withington, who is a 6'5", 240-pound defensive lineman. Okay. He is out of, I pull up his prospect stuff here. He's out of Briarwood Christian in Birmingham, Alabama. Again, 6'5", 240 pounds. He has some early traction on the recruiting side of things. Only a few offers so far, but schools like Cal have already offered him. Troy, UAB, a little bit more of a regional base as far as like Troy, UAB, like those types of schools. But there is early indication that there's a lot of interest in Mr. Withington, who again is kind of a strong side end, but probably projects best inside long term as kind of a playmaking three technique as he fills his body. Kind of a similar profile to what Joseph Reif is in the 2025 class for Notre Dame. Again, we're talking about a 2026 defensive lineman out of the state of Alabama. He has been very active and very busy. He's been to several schools just over like the last week or so, including I think he stopped in Michigan over the last couple days as well. So he is kind of on a little bit more of a Midwest swing that a couple of these guys do this time of year to make sure that they can touch base on as many schools as possible. So does Garrett Withington get a Notre Dame offer this weekend? I wouldn't be shocked, right? I'm not necessarily predicting it, but he is certainly a defensive lineman that is catching certain schools' attention. He was also at Alabama pretty recently as well. So we'll see as he continues to gain traction on the recruiting trail. Another 2026 offensive lineman, Maxwell Riley, who's out of Avon Lake in the state of Ohio. Okay. This young man is rated very, very high, according to the recruiting services, ranked on the 247 ranking as number 13 overall player, number 3 offensive tackle in the 2026 class. On their composite ranking, he's rated as a 4-star, number 31 overall, number 7 offensive tackle. He has offers from Ohio State, Texas A&M, Alabama, amongst several other huge schools at this time. Maxwell going into this one, I always want to do the Geico commercial too. You know, the pig in the back of the car. Maxwell. Anyway, sorry, ADHD kicking in there for a second, y'all. I truly apologize for that. Maxwell Riley, though, Notre Dame hasn't had a ton of conversation with Notre Dame yet, right? But there's a possibility that a good visit kind of kickstarts that a little bit. Another player that I would not be shocked at all, as long as the coaches kind of check him out, physically, if he is a guy that they want to potentially add to the offer list in 2026, because there's only 8 offensive linemen right now that have been offered by the University of Notre Dame in 2026. And getting a guy like Maxwell Riley with his profile and his offer list to campus, just wouldn't be totally shocked if he's not a guy that Notre Dame kind of pulls the trigger on this weekend potentially. So keep an eye out for Maxwell Riley as well as a guy that could potentially get an offer this weekend if everything goes well. So that's it, folks. That's the players that will be on campus this weekend. Make sure you're subscribed over at boards.irishbreakdown.com. I'll be having my typical intel over the weekend as far as how visits went with certain players, including some of the 2025s the last couple of days. And we'll be talking about the 2026 and early, just kind of pulse on some of these players as well. Make sure that you hit the like button on this. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, notification bell. If you listen to me on your favorite podcast platform, 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. Go Irish, and talk to you again very shortly on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.